Good afternoon, all. Thank you all so much for being here. We're so excited to have you and our friends with Gallup as we discuss the state of well-being in our community. My name is Nicole Ham, and I am honored to serve as the Executive Director at Blue Zones Project Jacksonville. And we are so thrilled that you all have joined us today. Members of our team are also on the call with the Blue Zones Project Jacksonville backgrounds as well as their titles. And so we invite you, if there is a specific piece of this work that speaks to you, please feel free to connect with the respective leader on this call. The chat box is open, and please feel free to ask your questions via chat. We will have designated breaks throughout the presentation to answer your questions. And of course, this is being recorded, and we will follow up with a post town hall survey if there's anything that we were not able to get to in the time. So, an overview of our agenda for today. Welcome, which is what we're doing right now. We'll talk a little bit about the history of Blue Zones. We'll talk specifically about Blue Zones Project Jacksonville, and we'll talk about how all of this work works together. And then we're going to hand it over to our partners at Gallup to really get into what you're all here to learn, which is what is happening in Jacksonville and what is the state of our well-being from a data-driven perspective. So again, we are so glad that you took the opportunity to join us today. We're looking forward to sharing this information with you, as well as you being able to see yourself in this work and how you want to get involved. So Blue Zones is based on research. There are 5 longevity hotspots throughout the world where people are living better longer. And when we say better longer, we mean without chronic disease and feeling a sense of connectedness and overall well-being. And so those 5 longevity hotspots, as you can see on the screen, are Loma Linda, California, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, Sardinia, Italy, Ikaria, Greece, and Okinawa, Japan. And so with a team of researchers, scientists, and genealogists, our founder, Dan Buettner, explored these places to really understand what is happening in these parts of the world that people are living so long and so well. And what he discovered were that there were 9 commonalities or characteristics that we aptly call the Power 9 that were a solution to this model. And so just very quickly, as we talk about the Power 9 in this model, we first and foremost want to acknowledge that all of these things are accessible and free. You do not have to be a millionaire to live long or live well. And it is not socioeconomic restricted, nor is it restricted by race, gender, or any other demographics. And so this model comprehensively and holistically works together so that people can access better, healthier, longer lives. Starting from the top, we talk about moving naturally. And this is just natural movement, whether that is walking to the store or sitting on the floor and getting up and down throughout the day. These communities did not go to the gym and lift a ton of weights each and every day. They were nudged into movement just by simply the design of their community. Purpose. Everyone in these communities knew their why. What was their reason for being and existing when they woke up in the morning? And how can they ensure that the work that they're doing or their day-to-day lives lean into that? We talk about your true north, and when you know your why, you don't tend to lose your way. And that's something that we want to empower and focus on here at Blue Zones. And downshifting. The Greeks like to nap, which is my personal favorite. But we have people that like to do yoga, breath work, or maybe they don't look at their phone before 10 a.m. or respond to emails after 7 p.m. Downshifting is just taking a beat, a breath, a space from the noise and the busyness of our day-to-day lives and to find some solace to manage stress. Eating wisely, the 80% rule. This is an opportunity where we talk about the power of the pause. And so while we are not a dietary or nutrition program, we do talk about how food impacts our bodies and our lifestyles. And the 80% rule is eating until you're 80% full. Taking a moment, right, as my mom would say, understanding, are you still really hungry? Or are you eating with your eyes rather than your stomach? This is such a powerful one that we've really been working on with restaurants, as well as community understanding of how we can have these portions in our community that contribute to better, longer lives. Plant Slant. Again, we are not a vegetarian, vegan-based nutrition dietary program, but we do see the power of how plants can impact our well-being and our overall health. And so while we're not saying take anything away from your meal, we are saying maybe you can consider adding more plant-based items into your diet, or what I like to say, making your side dish, which is usually your vegetables or your fruit, your main dish. Again, not trying to take anything away, but acknowledging the opportunity and the option to bring in more produce and more beans, more legumes, grains into your diet. Wine at Five are also Friends at Five. Really talking about the social connectivity and the power of community. If you're anything like me, spending time with a good group of friends, it can do wonders for not just your physical, but also your mental health. We do want to acknowledge that in some of these communities, there is the research that backs up a small portion, a 4-ounce pour of wine. However, what this is really focused on is the connectivity and the community that we can come together around food or beverages. Connectivity, your positive pack. I'm sure we've all heard you are who your friends are, and that positivity is infectious. In the same token, negativity can be as well. And so when we have positive people and role models and leaders in our lives, we are able to take that positivity ourselves and bring it into our own lives, again, contributing to our better health and well-being. Loved ones first. This can be the family you have or even the family you choose, but being intentional about making time and spending time with those people that you care about and that care about you is an incredible asset to longevity and lifestyle. And last, but certainly not least, is belonging. Believing in something bigger than yourself or finding that community, spiritual, religious, or otherwise, where you feel like you belong. We are really intentional about saying that this research did come out of designated religious practices. However, we also understand that feeling connected and feeling a sense of belonging in this world, whether that is spiritual, religious, faith-based, or otherwise, is an incredible asset to our well-being. So this Power 9 model, as credible as it is, works collectively. And so we can't just have one thing versus another and expect to live better, longer lives. We have to consider all elements of the Power 9 model and solution, and not just our culture, but also in our environment, so that people do feel like they can access and have and take advantage of these characteristics and commonality in their lifestyle. So Blue Zones, our calling is to empower everyone, everywhere to live better, longer. And in this statement, I'd like to focus on 3 words specifically: empower, everyone, and everywhere. Blue Zones is for everyone, no matter what side of town you live on, how much money you bring in a year, or even what your background or home life has looked like. We want to ensure that Blue Zones feels accessible, not just something to do, but it's really a verb that encompasses the lifestyle. Here, even in our own project, we toss around the term, are we blue zoning today? Are we taking time to take that walk with our colleagues and have a walking meeting? Or are we taking the time to really be intentional about the food that we put into our bodies? It is everyone, everywhere, and anyone can access this. And we hope that you would find access and community with us in a local project. So where have we been and where are we going? So Blue Zones project came to Jacksonville in June of 2021 during the assessment phase. So really taking a look at the landscape of Jacksonville. What is happening? Where is it happening? Where are our assets? And we are taking an asset-based approach. So while we can understand the challenges and opportunities, we want to focus on what's happening really well in our community. And then, of course, we listened. We wanted to really understand not just from a high-level view or from a corporate view of what is happening in our community, but also listening to the community itself. Where are we? What do you see? What do you need? What are you hearing? What have you learned? And how can we be a partner in health and well-being and quality of life in our community? We came together with a colleague with a slew of partners that have acted not just as a governing body, but also as city and community experts. Even on this call, I see those that we have entrusted and asked to help us lead different areas and bodies of work so that we can better understand and make the right moves for our community. And then we began to move forward with discovery and blueprint. So we began to build our strategic plan based off of what we've learned and what we've discovered. And that strategic plan or our blueprint is really a living, breathing document that we revisit yearly based on the data that you'll see today, as well as the things that we've learned more about throughout our time and community of how we can move forward. In June of 2023, we threw a big party where I know most of the people on this call did attend. And it was so exciting to have so many people of our community come to that kickoff. And today, 18 months later, we are still doing that work in the thick of it with over 6 approved restaurants and grocery stores, over 7 approved Blue Zones approved schools, and over 3,000 employees impacted by working with the Blue Zones approved workplace, and ultimately reaching over 20,000 people in our community about Blue Zones Project Jacksonville. So while we've had a great amount of progress, we know that there's still a ways to go, and that's something that we'll hear about today. What are the opportunities and assets that we can leverage? Blue Zones Project Jacksonville is really focused on 5 key zip codes in our community. And what you'll see in our Gallup data is we encapsulate that by 3 different parts of town. East Jacksonville, which is considered 32206, neighborhoods such as Out East as well as Brentwood. North Side, 32208 and 32209, encompassing communities like Sherwood and Durkeeville. And the West Side, zip codes 32210 and 32244, encompassing neighborhoods such as Argyle, Ortega, and even Confederate Point. With Jacksonville being a consolidated community, our policy and our schools work reach out beyond those 5 zip codes. And when we talk about the pillars and how this works, we are intentional of being focused on those 5 zip codes as well. As you can see on this call, we have about 14 full-time staff members that help move this work forward. And I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge my gratitude for each and every one of them that have taken such initiative and innovation in the way that we've approached this work, ensuring that community is first and foremost in the way that we design our interventions in community. Blue Zones Project Jacksonville is a 5-year, 9-month project, and we are currently in year 2, meaning that we will be entering into year 3 this summer, year 4, and year 5. So again, 18 months old, still in our toddler phase, but still a great length of opportunity to go as we continue to move the needle forward in well-being, and not just east side, west side, and north side of Jacksonville, but all of Jacksonville. Blue Zones Project Jacksonville works through 3 pillars, and we really acknowledge the life radius model. And so what that means is, where are people spending their time, right? Especially in a community as large as Jacksonville. We're a city of neighborhoods where most people do all of the things within that life radius. So their kids may go to school right around the corner. Their favorite park may be down the street. Their favorite restaurant or where they go to grab their groceries or produce may be within the vicinity. And so our thought process is, if we can impact that life radius model, we are able to almost easily and explicitly nudge the needle forward to where there is an access and opportunity that is as natural as breathing or as natural as their regular routine in their day-to-day lives. And so the way that we break those pillars down in that life radius model are in this way. We have to understand it in a big picture that distills itself down into this incredible puzzle piece of work. So people, connecting with people, ensuring people understand what Blue Zones is, what resources to health are accessible, and understanding where people are spending their time, whether that be a faith-based organization, or it might be a civic or social or nonprofit organization that they're engaged and involved in. How can we find ourselves in the thread that ties us together as people in these spaces for information and ultimately success? We also understand the power of media and public awareness to where if someone is talking about Blue Zones and no one's heard of it, that they can chime in, or the power of having media partners that can elevate great stories or information that is happening in our community and making information accessible to all. Places, specifically working with restaurants, grocery and convenience stores, and work sites or places of business. How can we invite training, leadership, development, and even small changes in operations to ensure that consumers, employees, and otherwise are able to understand and have a quality of life and access to options in these places that nudge them into better choices? In schools, our young people are so important as they are the future of our community. And so, really getting into a school-based level to reach our young people where they spend the most time, which is the school institution, but also beyond that, of where they're spending their time after school, whether that's with organizations or places that they tend to gather and congregate and engage in dialogue. Ensuring that we've carved out that piece to make an approach that is digestible and accessible for our young people is incredibly important piece of our work. And policy. Policy, we classify into four sectors of built environment, which we quantify as our living area, our roads, our parks, our neighborhoods, and our food systems. How is food accessed? Is it accessible? And what is the infrastructure and agriculture system of our community look like? And tobacco and alcohol policy, really being intentional, especially as we work with young people, as we have seen that some of these things can become branded or marketed or accessible to young people in a way that we want to be conscientious of so that their health and well-being is supported as they go on. And so pulling all of these pieces together is no easy lift. And we are excited to share that even in 18 months, that there's been an incredible breadth of work. We've approved restaurants like One Foxy Lady Cafe, who has indicated their healthy items that are on their menu, and has even had catering opportunities that elevate plant-based options that still hold true to our Southern style of culture. We've worked with Kevin Carrico, city councilman in the city of Jacksonville, to pass smoke-free parks legislation so that our parks can be smoke-free and people feel safe where they are engaging, that there won't be secondhand smoke in those chemicals that can be affected. And working with schools to identify other opportunities for health and well-being inside the school system. For example, instead of a bake sale that would fundraise money, doing a fun run that encourages our young people to move naturally while also bringing in those necessary funding for them to put on programs. And of course, ensuring that we are finding community together. And so whether that is a movement moai, whether that's yoga, walking, or even eating wisely through a potluck together, we are able to really find that fabric of thread of community. And of course, we are excited to be partnering with Earth's Farm and Market to really ensure that we are creating a sustainable food system in the north side of Jacksonville where local produce can be accessed. And of course, through media, being able to highlight all of that with partners like News for Jax and other print, radio, and media partners. So this work is a multi-tiered approach. And like I said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. None of this happens overnight and none of this happens in silos. We are truly working together with community as a community-led and engaged project to ensure that people feel like they can access on however level they see fit. So whether that's just attending an event or becoming engaged in a working group that we call a sector committee, our newly launched ambassador program of people that really want to elevate this work. And I know I see one on our call, Mr. Basel. And of course, community leadership, those champions that really make this all possible in addition to the work of this team. So our strategic plan, our blueprint as it stands, is available and accessible on our website as well as by scanning the QR code. So if there is an element of this project from people, places, schools, or policy that you're interested in, how do they do what they do? This is in our strategic plan for your reference and your review. And we offer for you to look at it and provide your feedback and engagement on how we can either integrate some of these objectives in progress, or how you want to be involved in the space. Thank you to our sponsors. Without you, this would not be possible. Baptist Health, Brooks Rehabilitation, the City of Jacksonville, Community First Credit Union, Florida Blue, Jacksonville Jaguars Foundation, Jacksonville University, Jesse Ball DuPont Fund, Mayo Clinic, UF Health, and United Way. Thank you so much for coming together and seeing the investment of Blue Zones Project Jacksonville and how it can move our community forward. Woo! So, we're here for what you've all been waiting for. I'm going to turn it over to our good friends at Gallup, Mr. Dan Withers, to share and walk us through what we've learned in this most recent data set and how we can apply it to not just what Blue Zones is doing, but what we're doing collectively as a community. And so, without further ado, Mr. Dan Withers, thank you so much for being here, and we invite you to begin sharing your data presentation.
Thanks, Nicole. Nice job. Dan Buettner's got nothing on you. Um, hey, everybody. Thanks for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. I'm going to share my screen and then hang with me just a second. There we go. Um, and then I'll walk you through these results. I've been with Gallup. I'm based in Omaha. I've been with Gallup for almost 34 years now, so it's the only grown-up job I've ever had. Since 2008, I got tapped on the shoulder and was asked to quit my old job and start a new one, which was managing the research for what at the time was called the Gallup Healthways Wellbeing Index. It's a pretty unique, one-of-a-kind thing. It exists to this day. We collect the opinions of about 25,000 randomly selected adults per year. And I spent a lot of time thinking about, writing about, speaking about things pertaining to well-being. Now, in the meantime, of course, Blue Zones came along, and Ben Liedl got a lot of interest, who was CEO at Healthways at the time, had a lot of interest in this. So there was a lot of symmetry with what we were doing with the National Wellbeing Index. And Gallup became kind of a third-party arbiter of measurement in these Blue Zones communities. Gallup's not involved in every single Blue Zones community nationwide, but we're involved in most of them. We've been in 11 states now, I think, over 70 communities. I've been involved with every single one of those, dating back to the beach cities in South LA County in 2010. And they're still going, by the way. So I have a lot of institutional knowledge when it comes to this kind of stuff. And as I walk you through these results, I'll share as much of that wisdom as I can to help contextualize what we're seeing, help manage expectations, still early in the game, and just kind of talk about maybe what we commonly see elsewhere. Let me start with methodology. Our field period was in the fall of 2024. Nicole already gave you kind of our priority communities, those focus zip codes inside of Duval County. This is the third time we've done this. The first one was in early 2023. The second wave was in late 2023. And now the third one's in late 2024. We did that initial baseline measurement really good 2, 3 months before anything was happening as far as interventions on the ground inside of our priority zones. So it's wave three, but it's only about a year and a half in to processes being put in place to try and make long-term change to the well-being of people who live in this area. And that's important context with, kind of what we would expect to see at this stage of the game. It's still early. We did, as we've done in the past, this is all address-based sampling, gang. So the randomly selected households, we mail out a hard copy survey. It'll have an invite letter. It'll have a $1 bill tossed in. The incentive makes a difference in our response rates. We don't go higher because you start throwing away money and it becomes not worth it. But just the $1 bill is enough to get people to sit down for 10 or 15 minutes and fill in the survey. We do provide, of course, a QR code in the invite letter. A lot of people hit the code and will choose to do the survey online. Web-based data collection and mail-based data collection mixed together very comfortably. Gallup is very comfortable mixing those two modes. We do so all the time, and that's the case here with Jacksonville as well. Altogether, we mailed out about 31,000 questionnaires into our focus areas, but then also the rest of Jacksonville as kind of a de facto control group. About 1,300 were bad addresses that got sent back. We wound up with 3,295 total completed surveys, with a response rate of 11%, which is good, really quite good considering the demography of the population into which we are administering our survey. And it's actually a little bit better. It's about 10.5% originally, and so we've actually improved in that process a little bit. Good job to John Schreiner at Gallup as our chief methodologist. He's always refining his technique to maximize our response rates. So that's the lay of the land as far as the data collection. Are there any questions anybody has about the methodology before I move on? Clear as mud? Okay. So let's go on to stability of results. I'm not going to show any Jacksonville overall. We do have Jacksonville overall data that has been provided to Blue Zones team. Um, Really, the focus is on our three priority zones, and we'll also look some at the remainder of Jacksonville too. The sample size is there in that second column, along with the margins of error. With response percentages around 50%, that's going to be your maximum expected margin of error. And so that's in north side, west side, East Jacks, and the rest of Jacksonville, plus or minus 4 percentage points and change. As you get closer to the margins, response percentages say around 10%. Now you're talking about maybe diabetes rate or smoking rates. The margin of error gets smaller. So then it's about plus or minus 2.5 points. We're also going to show you as we've done in the past, the well-being index score itself. That's a single 30,000 foot number. And the 5 element scores. Those are all in 0 to 100 scales. These are not proportions. They're not percentages. These are rebased mean scores. So it's an index, and the margin of error is a lot tighter around those, a little over a point. So those are the stability results. We have very, very normal distribution curves. We have very good data at our disposal. I jumped over without mentioning, but should mention as a reminder that all of our data are weighted, of course. We use a raking algorithm. It's iterative proportionate weighting, similar to what's done in government health surveys, where we are correcting for the imperfectness of the randomness of our samples. No sample is ever going to be perfectly random. And so when we have individuals from groups that are overrepresented in our sample, they'll count as a little less than one person in the overall data set. Individuals from groups that are underrepresented in our sample will count as a little more than one person. That's what the weighting is there for. And all of that is included in those margins of error. That's the reference to the design effect up top. Just real quick on the well-being index itself. This was developed back in '07. Gallup has been in the business of measuring human happiness, living standards, and well-being going back to the 1940s. In '07, that was when Jim Clifton and Ben Liedl, who were CEOs of Gallup and Healthways respectively at the time, came together with this vision that the well-being index is something that we could create that could make a big difference in the lives of the population. And we brought in global experts, Nobel laureates like Danny Kahneman and Angus Deaton, Arthur Stone, who's at Stony Brook University at the time in Long Beach, go Seawolves, the late great Ed Diener, Jim Prochaska, Joe Coughlin from MIT Age Lab, real heavyweights in the field, helped us look at 50 years worth of data, and then we modeled it into the Wellbeing Index survey. It's changed over the years. Out of the very gate, we always said that we anticipated it would get updated over time as our understanding of well-being became more sophisticated, and we've landed on these 5 elements. They have very good symmetry with the Power 9 principles. Imperfect symmetry, but very good symmetry altogether. It makes the Wellbeing Index a really nice survey instrument to administer in concert with the work that Blue Zones is doing on the ground in communities. Um, what we call the five essential elements, I'll just go through them fast. There's career well-being. That's liking what you do, being a good natural right fit for what you do, using your natural strengths, learning and growing, setting and reaching goals. Social well-being is a love that you have in your life. Um, Getting positive energy from family and friends, having someone in your life who cares about your health and well-being, financial well-being, which is a struggle in our priority zones here in Jacksonville. It isn't about your income so much, although certainly income influences it. Most definitely it does. But it's how you manage your wealth and live within your means to build financial security. That's financial well-being. Um, Community well-being is the emotional attachment you have to the area where you live. Do you feel like it's perfect for you and your family? Are you proud of it? Do you feel safe within it? Do you give back to it in meaningful ways? And then there's physical well-being. Physical well-being includes several aspects of mental health. If you're wondering where mental health is, it's there. We'll get self-report height and weight for BMI weight class. We'll ask about all the major disease burdens. We'll ask about clinical depression and other mental health struggles. We'll ask about behaviors such as healthy eating habits, exercise habits, smoking habits, and we'll include some more subjective metrics like feeling active and productive every day, very good natural movement surrogate. So that's it. The instrument itself is over 40 questions long. Not every question maps one of the five elements, or two ladder of life questions, for example. We set aside daily emotions. We set aside. They're kind of set apart, but the large majority of the questions in the survey instrument map to one of these five. Okay. So thanks for hanging with me for the context. Let me go through kind of some of the main findings, and then I'll get into more detailed results. The Well-Being Index score is statistically unchanged and remains below the U.S. levels in all three of our intervention zones in Duval County. That's not a particular surprise, again, only about 18 months in to the interventions. However, one, I think, very good piece of news is that community well-being, um, that particular element is up by statistically significant margins with high levels of certainty all the way across our three intervention zones. That compares to no change in the remainder of Jacksonville, again, kind of that de facto control group. Community well-being, not always, but usually that's the first domino to fall. That's the one that in where Blue Zones has boots on the ground and are doing the kind of things that Nicole was talking about. Community well-being starts to improve. It has the least inertia involved with it. And so there's good face validity to what we're seeing here. Very encouraged that community well-being is up. And it's up not just by statistically significant margins, but by meaningfully improved margins in all three of our zones. If you're wondering what the list is after community, social well-being is usually the second one to go. And we have promising signs of improvement with social well-being too. That also has good face validity. Get those two elements moving in the positive direction. The other ones that shakes loose some of the other ones. When you get to something like financial well-being, that's more of a wild card. That's frequently going to involve things that are kind of outside of what our control. And so sometimes you're just kind of stuck with the hand that you're dealt. Financial well-being is down in Northside. It's down quite a bit in Northside, and that just throws a lot of sand in the gears of other things, including the healthy foods that you choose to eat, or whether you're going to exercise or not, or how you're spending time with your family and friends. All those things can be influenced negatively in a time where I'm having to worry more about money than I was a year and a half or 2 years earlier. And so that's a big part of the story inside of Northside. It's creating a drag there that doesn't exist with East Jacks or West Side. Physical well-being, so you got community, you got social. Financial well-being is kind of a wild card. But physical well-being comes later. That and career those kind of come later, 3 and 3A. And it's a mixed bag here. Now, again, we're only a year and a half in, so I find what I'm looking at with the physical well-being estimates are quite unremarkable based upon my experiences over the last 15 years of researching Blue Zones communities. That's very much more of a marathon rather than a sprint. You always have to remember, gang, that the trajectory of physical well-being is comprised of behaviors and choices and mechanisms that are years in the making. And that's what you inherit inside of any given community that Blue Zones gets involved with. So the first order of business is to bend the curve on that trajectory by changing the way people think about the food that they put in their mouths, by changing the way that people think about moving about. And of course, all the built structure and involvement with local institutions, the schools, the restaurants, the grocery stores, businesses, all that stuff takes a while to do. So the first thing is bend that trajectory, and then the second thing is change the trajectory. Typically, in my experience with most communities, you're about 3 years in before you can kind of really start seeing a more prolonged and sustained pattern of change trajectory with physical well-being. Again, at the point of this survey, we're about a year and a half into the intervention. So that's where physical is at. Career well-being, kind of the same thing. That's liking what you do and using your natural strengths, having a leader who gets you inspired about the future. That's career well-being. That one tends to be a little bit slower too. Community first, social second, and then you got the other ones. Um, Awareness of Blue Zones project is such an important one. I'll come back to this later. I can't emphasize enough how important it is as far as improving our probability of success in moving the needle on large population well-being. It's really nicely improved in East Jacks. It's statistically significantly improved in West Side. It's flat in North Side. Um, the decline in financial well-being can influence a lot of things, including uh, just leading people not to pay as close attention because their focus has moved over to other things. But right now, it's good news. All at this stage of the game, all of them should be everybody should be at least, by everybody, I mean Blue Zones communities everywhere at this point should be at least 10%, should be at least double digits awareness. We have hit that goal in all three of our priority zones in Duval County. East Jacks is up to 18%, so it's looking really good. Your long-term goal is going to be to get to 40%, and I'll come back to that a little bit later, but this is something that tends to gain momentum over time. It starts out slow and then it picks up speed. So I'm excited about what I'm seeing as far as the improved awareness, and the awareness level itself is good, right where we want it at this point. Desire to live and age in the current community is up in West Side, and it's directionally improved in North Side, despite the decline in financial well-being. We tend to see that get better in Blue Zones communities, and that's true. Another thing that is a common Blue Zones effect is an increase in volunteerism, being out and about in the community, and that's true in 2 out of our 3. If you combine the 3 together, as a combined population, it's statistically significantly up, and that's a Blue Zones effect. And so I'm very encouraged by the sight of that. The other one that's kind of linked to that volunteerism is reports that safety is a barrier to walking and biking for non-recreational reasons. Um, that's better. That's gotten better. It's still really high. That was up over 50%. Now it's in the mid 40s, but it's gotten better. And a lot of that has to do with enhanced volunteerism that's going on. You can control for the actual objectively derived crime statistics, property crime and violent crime. Where volunteerism goes up, controlling for the crime itself, concerns about safety goes down because the more time I spend volunteering and giving back to my community, I'm out and about. It has a demystifying effect on my concerns around safety. And so I'm really encouraged by seeing a reduction in concerns about safety to doing those things. As concerns come down, that greases the wheels for more people to be out doing, moving their bodies and getting on their bikes, walking around. That's what we want. So those are, I think, the main takeaways. Let me start with, I'll start showing you some data now. So this is the well-being index score itself. Left to right, wave one, wave two, wave three, and the change. We'll show green and red arrows if there's anything that's statistically significantly changed. You'll notice the absence of red or green arrows. Everything is inside the margins. North side is kind of banking down. That's significant with maybe 65 or 70% certainty, but it's still well below our requirement in our stats rules of at least 95% confidence that what we're seeing is real and not just a function of sampling error. East Jacks is really unchanged. West Side overall is unchanged. The rest in Jacksonville, the city of Jacksonville, our entire sampling area, are both identical. Haven't budged an inch since wave one. So that's where we're at again as far as that very highest level well-being index score nationally, also unchanged during that time. If you go into now, here's the five elements. This top row is the well-being index score. So those are all numbers that you just saw. Okay. And what we're showing is the current number, and then we're showing the change from baseline, and then we're showing an arrow, either green or red to mean better or worse. Sometimes a down arrow is good. So focus on the color, not the direction of the arrow. Let me start at the bottom, and then I'm going to kind of move around a little bit as I go. There's that community well-being up in East Jacks, up in North Side, way up in West Side. They're all that orange shading that you see there. There's the score itself. The orange shading means statistically significantly worse than what we find nationally, and that's common when you're in areas that are socioeconomically challenged like these priority zones are. It's also really great to see community well-being improving despite that. That is a blue zones effect. I'm quite confident of it and love seeing it happen. Let me move up here to social, right here, social well-being. You'll see the absence of any orange, so everybody's kind of inside the margins with where we're at nationally, kind of matching national levels. Um, and I see there's some improvement going on in East Jackson. There's improvement going on with West Side. In fact, that 1.9 is going to be significant with at least 85% certainty. Social, as I noted, is usually the second one to go, and we're seeing signs that is happening, and I'm very encouraged by that. Now let me take you down to financial well-being. You'll see some red arrows. We're flat in East Jacks. West Side is kind of directionally improved, but it's really gotten worse in North Side. It's dropped 3.7 index points. That's quite a bit. Easily statistically significant with at least 95% certainty, and certainly meaningfully large decline. Now we've dropped into the 40s. Anytime that financial well-being, I mean, low 50s is low. Mid 50s is pretty low. But when you're into the 40s, that's really low. And that's forcing people to spend a lot of time doing things just to try and get by. And it's taken their eye off of the ball when it comes to things that are well-being related. That makes it harder. It is impressive that North Side has still managed to improve that community well-being despite this going on with financial well-being. What is happening though, that financial well-being is really hurting that career. Career well-being, this is not just for workers. All these questions are asked of everyone. They're structured that way. Career well-being is about liking what you do and using your natural strengths, and you're learning new and interesting things. So wherever you are in your life's trajectory, it's relevant. But where financial well-being comes down, that hurts those things. That's harmful to career well-being. You can just feel it, dragging that down. Same thing with the physical well-being too. That people are worried about paying their bills. They're buying cheaper food that's not as good for you. They're less likely to be out exercising, etc. So that's the basic lay of the land here. The other thing that I wanted to call out with the rest of Jacksonville, financial well-being has come down. So we're seeing it in North Side. We're also seeing it outside of our priority zones. Okay, so there's the highest level throwdown. I'm going to go into detail, but before I move into more detailed item level results, does anybody have any questions about what you've seen so far?
Dan, we had a question in the chat. Could low physical well-being also mean people are less likely to visit the doctor?
Um, that's a good question. It's a tricky one to answer. What we Here's the thing. What we find in lower income areas is higher levels of uninsured rate and lower levels of personal doctor usage. By personal doctor, that's the person you go to once a year, whether you're sick or not, to get a checkup. Those are related. Sometimes that gets so low that insured rate gets so low and personal doctor usage gets so low that it suppresses diagnoses of chronic conditions because people aren't going to the doctor. So no, I've never been told that I have high blood pressure, but I don't have any insurance. I don't go to the doctor, so no one's going to diagnose me with that. Um, I think so. Anyway, the in general, sure. I think that you're going to see those two. You're going to see that mathematical relationship. It does get a little bit complicated though when we build in access to the healthcare system and how that can result in what I learn about myself in terms of my health.
Thanks, Dan. We had one more question. Can you explain what you mean by some of the results or blue zones effect?
Well, just based on my experience, things that are squarely inside of the wheelhouse of blue zones in terms of its interventions that correspond with movement in the estimates in Gallup measurement. Those are things that I think are likely blue zones effect. You never know for sure. Maybe people have decided to volunteer more that have never heard of blue zones or not involved with any blue zones activity. Sure. But again, there's a long-term pattern that I have seen across many communities that have blue zones injected into them that are consistent with the movement and the estimates that we see here. So that's what I mean by a likely blue zones effect. I think that blue zones has something to do with it, in my professional opinion.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Sherry, Hannah's going to answer your question in the chat. I think we're okay to move on. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks, Nicole. You're a good wingman. Um, Okay. This is an eye chart, I know. I won't do an exhaustive review of this, but I do want to walk you through some of this. This is the first of two slides on the evidence-based improvement metrics. We're interested in everything inside the well-being index. There are kind of some metrics. This list was compiled going back over a decade, and every single Blue Zones community that is using Gallup to administer the well-being index kind of has these as sort of the chief scoreboard metrics. Um, Again, I won't go through all of it, but just hang with me. Let me take you through some of this. I wanted to start with life evaluation. These are the first two questions of the survey, not linked to any of the five elements. It's the famous Cantrell ladder of life questions. Imagine a ladder with 10 rungs. The top rung represents your best possible life. The bottom rung is your worst possible life. Where are you today? Where do you think you're going to be on that ladder 5 years from now? So it's current life satisfaction and anticipated life satisfaction. Again, it doesn't make sense to put that in with any of the five elements. That's just kind of an outcome of those five elements of well-being, but it's a really good high level measure of how people are doing. Gallup 20 years ago empirically derived cutoffs using those two questions as a construct in concert with one another. And we that was based upon how we could sort people into different groups, and then we looked at how those groups were discerning from one another across an array of external outcomes. The cutoffs were 7 or higher to current ladder and 8 or higher to future ladder. It gets you classified as thriving. Okay. You have to check both of those boxes. Historically, that's kind of in the low to mid 50s of the US population, sitting at 52.6%. It's been a little lower the last few years. When you come across and we look at our three groups, there's encouraging improvement in West Side. North Side is down, and this is absolutely getting dragged down by financial well-being. Financial well-being has an outsized influence on your rating of whether you're of how you rate your life. All five of those elements are influencing it, but financial well-being can really create a drag if it's moving in the wrong direction. And I'm convinced that's what's going on there. These next four, you move into career well-being. The one that I really like, gang, about our priority zones in Duval County, is leader in life creates enthusiasm for the future. That's a really, really important piece to have in place for successful interventions, for moving the needle over time with well-being. You'll notice the blue shading, statistically significantly better than what we find nationally. I love it. And East Jacks, nice improvement, 8.6 points. That agreement level is up. That's statistically significant improvement. So that's a really good bell cow metric that we can leverage. You you've got to get the leaders involved. And we don't define what we mean by leader. This can be political leadership. It can be leaders of households. It can be clergy. It can be community leaders. It can be leaders of your workplace. It can be all of the above. But you want to get leaders talking about this stuff in a sustained and serious way that communicates the message. We care about well-being. We are sticking with it. It's not flavor of the month. It's never, ever going to go away. This is a part of what we're about now. The more that you can get the leaders doing that, the better our chances are of improvement. Another good bell cow, I use the term bell cow sometimes. The bell cow, as a reminder, is the cow with the cowbell around its neck. Bell cow walks, the cowbell clanks, and the other cows follow. I've got about 8 or 9 or 10 real bell cow metrics inside of the well-being index that are highly predictive, highly common characteristics of high well-being places, and are really good to have under your belt and to be working on. Using strengths daily is another really big bell cow. That's unchanged here and here inside the margins nationally, but we've got nice improvement going on in West Side. I love that. Using your natural strengths is related to everything that matters in life. This is something that Gallup has studied very significantly. About 30 million people worldwide have gone through Gallup's Clifton Strengths Assessment. It's something we know a lot about, and it's a really important piece of the well-being index. So I like seeing that going on. Getting into social well-being, social well-being is kind of directionally improved in East Jacks, directionally improved in West Side. These are not all the social well-being items; they're just our evidence-based improvement ones. But you can see how that's come down in North Side. And again, this is the buddy system, having someone in my life who's encouraging me to be healthy, that suffers when financial well-being comes down. It creates a drag there. And this is a big part of the story of why social well-being has lost a little ground. It's not down by statistically significant margins overall, but it's lost a little ground in North Side while it's improving elsewhere. You get less of this going on when people are worrying about paying the bills more. And you can see that effect here. Down in the blue boxes, gang, you get into community well-being. You'll see a lot of the orange. Community well-being is just lower. in these areas than it is nationally. These are national agreement levels with these statements. But lots of improvement across the board. And again, this is not the sum total of all of our community well-being metrics, but we've got a lot of good statistically significant improvement. Again, commonly found earlier on inside of Blue Zones communities. Community well-being is usually the first one to move. Okay, this gets into kind of some of the blocking and tackling of physical health now. And it's kind of a weird picture. And our sample for Northside this year, the obesity level clocks in 7 points lower than it was at baseline. Even as exercise rates are lower and natural movement is lower, you can kind of get some jinky readings like that this early on. It does tend to smooth out and the picture becomes more uniform over time. But that's kind of where we're at going on with Northside. East Jacks, that obesity level is higher in our most current estimates than it was at baseline. Again, a lot of these, I mean, obesity BMI is a really good example of trajectories that are put in place through years of behaviors and choices and culture before you ever get on the ground. And so you have to spend some time changing those choices and behaviors and culture. Culture is this is the way we do things around here, to bend that curve and change the trajectory. Um, the US at 37%. And that's self-report, of course. We don't adjust for vanity effect. CDC will have the US in the low 40s for obesity. We're always a little bit lower than CDC. But it's high. And when you're up in the 40s, that's high. And so, it's something that we're going to look to see get better. Smoking rate is unchanged. You see all that orange, pretty high smoking rates um, in East Jacks. Now, one thing that I am encouraged about is the uniformity of declines. They're all small, but they're all getting a little bit lower. When it comes to smoking, I pay a little bit more attention to uh, to changes in the direction, even when it's officially inside the margins. Blue Zones has a really good track history, folks, of lowering the smoking rate, even in areas where smoking rate's already pretty low, gets lower. And I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing here, that there's some smoking cessation going on. Um, I, that's I think that's kind of everything I want to hit on this slide. Let me just pause and give people a chance to ask questions. So Cole, anything in the chat I should respond to?
Yeah, we have one question from Susan. She asked, in Blue Zones communities that have existed in the US for a decade or more, have you seen impacts, whether stalls or big swings either way on the indices from major external shifts like the political climate, pandemic, and if so, were they sustained impacts?
Yeah, that's a good question. The answer is yes. That kind of stuff can matter. Between 2016 and 2017, for example, that 2017 was a record-setting year in the National Wellbeing Index for all the wrong reasons. We had about 20 states that had statistically significant declines from 2016 to 27 in well-being. No states improved. So it was a net change that was unlike anything we'd ever seen. And there was definitely a Trump effect associated with that. They wasn't restricted to just blue states, but when we discern it by political identity, Democrats got a lot worse, independents got a little worse, Republicans were kind of unchanged in terms of their well-being. And the things that worsened social well-being really took it on the chops, and community well-being got hurt too, quite a lot. That's a national trend that had it, that we picked that stuff up. We picked that up in Fort Worth. We picked that up a little in the beach cities. We saw that effect a little bit in Southwest Florida, down in the Naples area where we were measuring at the time. The other big one would be the Great Recession. And this is 08, 09. This predates Gallup's involvement with Blue Zones communities, but you definitely saw a big hit in well-being nationally across all 50 of the states. That was, a big economic downturn that resulted in those things. So the answer to the first part of the question is yeah, stuff that's outside of our control is always kind of lingering there in the background as a factor that can kind of gum things up for us on the short term with what we're doing. The answer to the second question is it never sticks though. And that includes changes, short-term changes in financial well-being. Financial well-being never keeps going down indefinitely. That'll turn around. So it can gum things up for you for a little while. Stay the course with what you're doing because that whatever inertia is created by that's going to loosen up and that's going to go away. I've seen that over and over again. So yes, short-term effects can happen. Um, Long term, it isn't really much of an issue. Anything
Yeah,
else, Hannah?
I think we covered all the questions in the chat, but one thing I just would emphasize is that while Blue Zones commissioned this data and the research, it really is representative of the communities we're discussing. So the respondents weren't asked to associate back to Blue Zones or think about their Blue Zones experiences. So it really is about their more holistic lived experiences across these 5 dimensions.
Yep. Good point, Courtney. Okay. Not a lot to say on this side. This is kind of all the chronic conditions. Hypertension, we came in with a much higher estimate in East Jacks. Again, with stuff like this, they're this is the effect of long-term trajectories that's been in place for a while, and you just have to bend that curve and start moving in the other direction. Oftentimes we do. The diabetes rate is quite high. It's high enough in the US now at 13.6%. That was back at about 10.5% in the late 2000s. It's a function of that increasing obesity rate. Obesity was about 25% back in those days. Now we're in the high 30s. So that drags up the diabetes, and you're going to see that here. A lot of diabetes going on. The depression rate these depression rates. Have you ever been diagnosed with a depression in your lifetime? Do you currently have, are you currently being treated for depression? These are both kind of at or near all-time highs since Gallup's been measuring this going back to January 2008. Depression took a big leap coming out of the pandemic. So if you look at 2019 compared to 2024, big increases in depression, especially among young people under the age of 40, even more so under the age of 30. 18 to 29-year-olds really took it on the chops coming through the pandemic as far as their mental health is concerned. And it does create barriers to success. I love seeing nice low depression rates in our Blue Zones communities because you kind of take that piece off the table as far as a barrier to getting people's attention, getting them active, getting them out and about in the community, and actually taking steps to improve their well-being. If you've got high levels of depression, you just got to it makes it harder. You got to fight your way through it because depression, as you know, just gets in the way of everything relevant to a life well lived, and makes it harder to get people involved. So our depression rates. If this row here is the percent that currently have or are being treated by depression. They banked a little bit higher since baseline levels, and it's pretty healthy, up around 1 out of 5, and you kind of just have to fight through that. Of course, many aspects of the Blue Zones intervention, many aspects of that racket is good for mental health, but you got to get people involved. And sometimes there's just inertia that comes with. Sometimes you just can't get out of bed in the morning, and there's nothing you can do about that. So that's where we're at as far as depression is concerned. Here's the uninsured rate. It's pretty high. Again, government measures uninsured rate in lots of different ways. All we ask is, do you have health insurance? Yes or no. So at this point in time, are you insured? 14% in East Jacks, 13% in North Side, better in West Side, just eight. And that estimate actually looks better. So does the personal doctor usage. That one is up. So those are both kind of basic access issues. Just a few things I wanted to point out here. This is the BRFSS question. Overall, is your health excellent, very good, good, fair, or poor? So I'm just showing you top two box and bottom two box. This question comes right after the two ladder of life questions. It's the third question inside of our survey environment. And it's kind of that general assessment of where I think that my health is, has gotten higher here and it's gotten higher here. Again, that's kind of that mixed bag that I was talking about, in those long-term trajectories. One thing I do like seeing is that daily experiences of significant amount of stress, that's eased off in East Jacks. And so our stress levels look okay. It's pretty elevated over here in West Side. Still officially inside the margins, but with the national estimates, but a little bit better. And then this last one, just coming down here and looking at that financial well-being, having enough money to do everything you want to do, that's a money management issue. That's a budget issue. It's gotten worse in North Side. That's part of the story with that reduction, that financial well-being. It's pretty low across each one of these levels. Okay. So that's the last of the well-being questions. I've got a handful of custom questions to walk you through, and then I'll be wrapped up as far as my slides are concerned. The first one gets back to this very important one, and that is, are you aware of the Blue Zones Project? Yes or no? At this stage of the game, everybody should be double digits, and that's where we're at. There's our control group. It's gotten a little better in the rest of Jacksonville too. So word's getting around. But we have statistically significant improvement in West Side. We've got it in East Jacks. North Side is unchanged. But North Side's kind of got other things going on that's taking its attention away a little bit. But you want this to be at least 10%, and that's where we're at. I like what's going on with East Jacks a lot. I don't know if there's ask yourselves, is our outreach any different in East Jackson than it is elsewhere? Because if it is, that's definitely an internal best practice, and you should draw upon, see if you can reproduce. If you find some key differences, reproduce those elsewhere. 40%, gang, is what you want to get this to. 40%. Awareness does tend to potentiate over time. It gains momentum over time. It always starts out low and kind of slow to get moving. But the more people that hear about you, the better they like you. The better they like you, the more they talk about you to others, and you start getting a snowball effect with awareness. Here's the favorability numbers. These are all reduced base. They're only asked the people that are aware. The favorability, it kind of varies. East Jacks is good, 61% favorable, 3% unfavorable. More of a mixed bag here and here. Again, it's limited to people that know of you. Awareness and favorability are positively correlated with one another. The more the people get to know you, the better they like you. So as awareness goes up, we usually see favorability climb as well, and we'll expect to see that happening here. Okay, how much do you agree or disagree that you want to live and age in the community where you currently live? Nationally, we're at 53% that are saying they strongly agree or somewhat agree. It was sitting in the low 40s in our 3 intervention zones back at wave 1, but there's some movement going on here. And again, this is one that you tend to see improve earlier than later in blue zones communities, and that's because it's a aspect of community well-being. Community well-being gets better. People are going to be more likely to say, "Yeah, I'll live and age here." And so you see that movement going on. West Side is up with at least 95% certainty. North Side is improved with about 80% confidence. East Jacks is just kind of unchanged. but I'm encouraged by the movement that I see there. This one's all pretty flat. Weather permitting in a typical week, how many days do you or members of your family spend at least 20 minutes using a local outside resource such as walking trail, sidewalk, park, or splash pad? The strongest generalizable relationship to well-being is 4 or more days. That's the magic cutoff. So that's how we proportionalize this. And you can see it's all quite flat compared to last time. So nothing really to see there as far as the outside resources. The volunteerism, though, I'm liking what I'm seeing. Within the past 6 months, how many hours have you spent volunteering in the community or area where you live? And again, 6 or more hours is the magic cutoff for volunteerism. That's all 5 elements improve, going from 0 hours up to 6. Once you get past 6, um, you don't really, that all those lines kind of flatten out, so you don't see any more improvement in well-being. But 6 is the magic number. That's just 1 hour a month is all we're asking. And look at what's happening. West Side up statistically significant. So is North Side, even amid that declining financial well-being. East Jacks is unchanged. Rest of Jacksonville is flat. This is, as we noted earlier, this is very likely a blue zones effect. And it's important for lots of different reasons. It's good for well-being, but it also can have an effect on this metric here. And so as we accumulate more data over the next couple of years, we'll see how this settles in. But thinking about the safety of the area where you live, how much would an improvement in your area's safety increase your likelihood of walking or biking for non-recreational reasons? Great deal, somewhat, or not at all. We're just showing percent a great deal. Back in wave one, some of you may recall, we were up in the 50s, which is really high for that metric. This typically will get somewhere in the 25% range. You get up in the 30s, it's kind of elevated. You get up in the 40s, that's pretty high. You get up to the 50s, that's really high. That's a real barrier. And so you want to see that getting better. It's come down. And volunteerism can play a role in that. You spend time out in the community, irrespective of changes in actual crime rate, it can have a demystifying effect. And can kind of take some of the air out of the balloon of concerns about safety as a barrier to my getting out, walking, biking around. This is, in this particular question, we're calling non-recreational reasons. So things like going to the grocery store, for example. In your neighborhood, to how many people do you routinely say hello? 6 or more is the magic cutoff here as far as relationship to well-being outcomes. I was kind of bummed to see it drop in West Side. So West Side already had lower levels of neighborliness than did North Side or East Jacks. And it's gotten worse. That gap between these two and West Side has widened. Um, you know, neighborliness is important. It is highly related to many aspects of well-being, not just community well-being, not just social well-being, but all 5 elements of well-being are linked to neighborliness. But from a practical perspective, getting that neighborliness higher is good for Blue Zone's work because the more people that you say hello to on a regular basis in the neighborhood, the more people that you might invite to come with you to planting a community garden or going to a free healthy cooking class or whatever. It's that, again, can have that potentiating effect. So keep working on that. Really not much to say here other than sort of a disappointing decline in West Side. I hope to see that bounce back next time. Okay, now healthy options. Do you always, usually, occasionally, or never have healthy options in your household? And we're showing top 2 box, always or usually. That's where we're at nationally. We were kind of in the 70s, a little bit below that in our priority zones. You can see that's lower than the rest of Jacksonville, which is generally better off as far as socioeconomic status, which is going to influence this for sure. North Side has worsened. That's going to be a function of financial well-being going in the wrong direction. When financial well-being goes in the wrong direction, people eat less healthy. They'll gravitate towards easily accessible, less expensive food that's not as good for you. West Side, though, we've got statistically significant improvement, which I like seeing. So that's good news amid some bad news going on inside of North Side. The workplaces are okay. I mean, we were back at wave one. We were better than what was going on nationally. It's unchanged in West Side and East Jacks, but North Side, which kind of had that nice 74%, say, yeah, always are usually. This is only asking workers. Always are usually available in the workplace. That has slid, and that can be a function of declining financial well-being too. Employers, when you got that going on, you can see a downturn in terms of investment in healthy food options for workers. And here's the most visited restaurant. US 63%. We were kind of right in line with national levels across our three priority zones, lower than the rest of Jacksonville. When you come up to wave three, unchanged, but there's North Side again, down 5 points, and that's statistically significant. Again, the lowering financial well-being can create a drag in all of these things, and you can kind of feel it in a lot of these North Side estimates. And then finally, we put in one new question this year, and that's vaping use. I don't have any national statistics to compare this to, but it's just throwing this up there so that you can see it. About 3 out of 4 have never vaped. You've got about 6% across our three zones, 9% in the rest of Jacksonville that vape frequently or regularly, daily or close to daily. Okay. So a few final thoughts, and then I'll drop out of sharing and take any final questions. I love the improvement in the community well-being. As I noted, that's usually the first one that gets moving, and it's moving in a uniform way. Social well-being usually follows, and we see, with the exception of Northside, we see some encouraging things going on with social well-being as well. So that's good. Both of that's good news. Again, the mixed bag of physical well-being is just unremarkable to me, having done this for a long time and have looked at trend data inside of Blue Zones communities for a long time. That one is just a slower worm to turn. You have to undo all of those choices and mechanisms that have been, in the oven for years before you ever even got here, and then start turning it around. So that's a slower thing to turn around. It does tend to level out over time. We do tend to see improvements across a wide array of metrics over time. You just got to be a little bit patient. Financial well-being, of course, that's a big part of Northside's story. But just kind of back to the question from the chat earlier, the financial well-being never keeps going down forever, anywhere. And so that is an impediment to Northside, as a part of Northside's well-being story at this early juncture. We should not expect that to continue to be so in the future. So just stay the course, and slowly we'll get that piece off the table as far as being something that's getting in our way. Awareness is right where it should be at this point, and we're ahead of the game in East Jacks. And again, we generally see a potentiating effect. It does gain momentum over time. You're going to 40%. You've got to continue to pound that rock. As awareness gets higher, gang, it increases the probability that people are going to get engaged with Blue Zone's work. Starting in 2025, this fall, we'll be back in the field. We're going to add a couple new questions, which I always save for deeper in the game. And one of those questions is self-report on how engaged you are in Blue Zone's project work. People that get engaged in the work, their well-being gets better compared to baseline than those who don't. And so, and that doesn't happen unless awareness is there first. So awareness looks fine, looks very good in East Jacks. Keep going. Keep doing everything you can to introduce yourself to the community. I can't emphasize enough the importance of that. I love the improved volunteerism. Yep, that is likely a Blue Zones effect. We see that's an aspect of community well-being. We tend to see that get better earlier than later. in blue zones communities, and we're seeing some very encouraging results there. And that can have the effect of alleviating safety concerns. Again, having sort of a demystifying effect. And then just the final point that, yeah, it's maybe a little trite, but it's true. This is a marathon. It is not a sprint. You have to be patient and just kind of let the process play out. But what I'm seeing so far in Jacksonville is um, in line with what I see in a lot of other communities, and and I think that bodes well. I think that the plate is well set now to kind of start getting things going. But again, we're at the point of this measurement, we're only a year and a half in, and large population health and well-being is just something that's kind of slower to move. You got to be patient and take your time. Start building up those social networks. Start getting uh, people aware of you and involved with your stuff, and then good things can happen. So that's so I'll pause right there. I know we're close to out of time, but happy to take any more questions that we got.
Dan, there were two questions in the chat really relating to the west side of Jacksonville. As you're not from Jacksonville, just a little bit of context. It is a fast-growing area in the city, as well as a little bit more spread out than our other focus zip codes. So Sarah and Judy both asked questions relating to the west side and wondered if you could speak to those questions. Sarah said, in regards to neighborliness, I'm a resident of the west side. Lots of property sizes seem larger and more spread out than other areas of Jacksonville. Semi-rural in some areas. Is it fair to make an assumption that this would affect the low numbers on the west side, directly relating to neighborliness?
Yes, yes. How we're organized in our community certainly can affect that. And if you kind of have some of that going on in West Side, that will retard the neighborliness numbers. Don't let yourself off the hook for trying to improve it. But it is very much a fair statement that's part of what's going on with the lower numbers compared to the other two. Yeah.
Great. And then as a follow-up to that, Judy asked, I sense that for the West Side development, that might be a factor for improvement with more residences and retail grocery stores and job opportunities.
Yeah, that's a good point. And there's a real close relationship going all the way back to 2008, our very first methodology report, the Gallup Healthways Wellbeing Index. We noted the strong relationship between a wide array of different standard of living and standard of life metrics and well-being, and employment rate is absolutely one of them. Unemployment rate is inversely related. They're highly reciprocal things. Having a robust jobs economy in the area, of course, is good for well-being. That improves well-being in lots of different ways. What's also true, though, with equal currency, is that when we have higher well-being folks living in your community, that becomes a more attractive place for businesses to move into and open up shop. And we see evidence of that all the time. So it goes both directions. But there's a real relationship between improving economic vitality and improving well-being.
Great, thank you so much. And then one final question asked by Susan and then added on by Tom. Is there an opportunity to add a youth component to the survey, or do you have any information regarding youth engagement with nature versus screen time or anything in that area?
We don't. Now that kind of stuff is things that Gallup has measured on our own and with other client organizations that are doing kind of work in the community. We've got a finite amount of room on our questionnaire. It's a four-sided questionnaire, and so it's got to fit inside of there. And we usually have room for about 7 so-called custom questions, and we are not beholden to the questions that we currently have. The vaping question, for example, was new this year. We swapped it out for a sleep question last time. And we can do that here. I don't have any objections to doing that, but that's just something where we talk through. We'll talk about survey development once we get into the summer. And if there's a lot of interest in kind of trying to measure some of that, we can do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think we had the opportunity to get to all the questions in the chat. But I really just want to take a moment to thank everyone for being here today, and just invite you to take the Blue Zones Pledge. It really helps to take that personal, intentional action and choice to allow us and yourself to focus on and improve your overall well-being, in addition to and help support kind of the data that we saw today. Additionally, Tony's going to drop in the chat. We do have a post survey that we would love your feedback on, and it really allows you to ask any additional questions that maybe you think of now or later that we can share with Gallup and then send out to you following the presentation today. We have a recording from today's Gallup presentation. It will be added to our Blue Zones Project Jacksonville YouTube channel. And additionally, by early next week, we will send out to all attendees a PDF copy of all of the Gallup data that you were able to preview today, as well as the direct recording and a link to that survey. So thank you so much. We invite you to, through the pledge or through that post survey, to sign up to stay connected with Blue Zones Project Jacksonville through our newsletter, our social media, and all other avenues that we have here. We're really grateful for the work that we get to do, and are grateful to Gallup, Dan, and Courtney for your support in sharing this information about well-being in Jacksonville. All right, thank you all, and have a great rest of your day.